simple practices. The first one is called Mukha Bhastrika. It is fierce expulsion of air out through the mouth. You breathe in through the nose and you breathe out through the mouth. And I'll just demonstrate it to you. So you can keep your hands in a fist like this. You can either sit in this mudra if that is more comfortably, you can sit in that, but try. But this particular pose, Vajrasana, is ideal for Mukha Bhastrika. So you keep the thumb inside and the fingers on top here. And you take a deep in breath. Rising up, you breathe in. Everybody can join me if you hadn't. Breathing in, out. So every chakra has a sound attached to it, a beach sound to awaken that particular chakra. So Om affects the third eye, the sixth chakra, as well as the top crown chakra. So when we are chanting Om, think about, that you are awakening these two chakras, the sixth and the seventh chakras. Okay. You can keep your hands comfortably like this, or you can put it in the mudra, whatever you feel comfortable. We'll do the Om chanting 9 times, breathing in. When too much ego energy increases in the world and the energy of manipulation and superficiality, a lot of us feel like, oh, it's too superficial here, I need to get the hell out of here. But it's happening at such a large mass consciousness that we are moving away from truth of our inner soul. We are moving away from soul itself, all the manipulation and the superficiality. And so we need Goddess Kali, the fierce goddess. She comes with the sword of truth and she slashes down all the illusions. And I'll get into her story afterwards, but before I share a story about her, I'll share another story. So this illusion of separation comes from this duality consciousness. Oh, this is black, this is white. Oh, this is you, this is me. There's always that kind of selfishness and ego-based behavior is causing this kind of separation. So the separation that we see in the outside world is also the separation within us. So first we'll start with looking at the separation that is there within us, the split that is there within us, and then I'll go on to tell the story about Goddess Kali. So this is a very short story, and it is about a boy called Tokuyu. He used to live hundreds of years ago in a monastery in Japan, in the village, in the mountains, very beautiful. And his job in the monastery was to go and get the water. So he would put a stick on his shoulders, and there would be one pot here and one pot here. He would go down the mountain and fill up water. And he would go singing his mantras or chanting and doing walking meditation or something like that. So once he was just sitting by the river, he had gone to fetch water, and suddenly he starts hearing sound of crying. One of the pots was crying. So one of the pots was a cracked pot. It had cracks in it, and the other pot was whole. So the cracked pot was crying. It was really looking very depressed and miserable. And Tokuyu asked, "Hey, why are you crying?" And the pot said, "I feel so guilty that because of me you have to go up and down the hill extra because I cannot hold all the water that you put in, so I lose half of the water on the way, and I feel so ashamed about myself for being so broken." And Tokuyu starts smiling and laughing. He said, "My dear, you have not been paying attention. Okay, when we go back home, I want you to pay attention and be present, see what is around." Then he starts walking again, singing, and then the cracked pot notices that on the left side, where the cracked pot was, the entire path is green and filled with flowers, and the other side was dry. And that is when the cracked pot realizes that my brokenness is a gift to so many flowers. So I would like to do an exercise, a very short exercise. If you all can, if you all have your paper and pen, otherwise I'll give you. I want you all to write down, make a list of the whole pot and the cracked pot, the positive qualities you think you have and the negative qualities, so-called negative qualities that you think you have. Just a few, okay? And then I'll tell you what to do. I've seen so many pictures of young girls around the world, and especially in India. The guys, they just throw acid on their face and they lose their entire face. They're in hospital for sometimes struggling for months. There's one I saw, she's barely 14 and she can hardly breathe. She has straws in her nose for breathing. And her mouth is mostly closed now, so she has to only take liquid through straw in her mouth. Her whole life is gone, is dead. But still, of course, she's alive. And when I see something like that, my blood just wants to boil. And I feel like, how is it possible that there are so many people in this country and such a small handful are being able to do what they are able to do? So I personally feel that there isn't enough rage in this world. And the kind of rage that is going to bring more like medicine in the world, the kind of rage that is going to stand up and say, that is enough, these are our boundaries, you cannot abuse us like this. Monsanto feeding people like crappy food, and I'm sure he has blood of many, many people on his hands. How is it possible that a little girl from Pakistan, 14 years old, where the girls are not even allowed in that village to come outside their house, she's able to stand at gunpoint with Taliban and still say, I am going to get myself education. I support education for women. She's 14. She's living in a country, or at least in a village, where they have no freedom. And whereas here in America, we have like 1,000,000 times more freedom than them. And I'm sure it has its dark side and maybe we are not 100% free, but we have so much freedom. And why is it that in spite of that freedom that we have to go out and create an uproar, create a revolution, that this is not okay? Why is it that we are still so complacent? And that, I feel, is because there isn't enough rage in this world. So I would like to share the story of goddess Kali. And she is Kali. The word Kali means dark, black. So she is considered to be the dark goddess. And ironically enough, she is also considered to be the most compassionate goddess. She's really, really fierce. If the weapons in her hands were not enough, she also has her tongue sticking out. She has a garland of heads around her neck. She's wearing a skirt made with hands. These are all, of course, symbolic of something. So primarily, she is the goddess of rage. She's fierce. She stands up for justice. She does not put up with bullshit. She's a lover of truth. And she wants to, with her sword, she has a sword in her left hand. With her sword, she wants to slash away, cut off anything that is creating, that is coming from the ego, that is creating the separation illusion in us. And that is going to violate the boundaries of her children, that is going to abuse her children. She's going to say, this is not okay. Don't you dare come close to my little girl. You'll be so freakishly sorry. So the mythological story behind the archetype of goddess Kali is very interesting. So thousands and millions of years ago, in Hindu mythology, there were gods and there were demons, and there was often fights, wars happening between gods and the demons. And of course, gods would always win. Gods were more powerful. But there was this one demon. His name was Raktavija. He was more powerful than any other demons. He was infinitely more powerful than all the gods and all the demons. So all the gods get really worried, oh my goodness, we're going to be destroyed. And then they decide, oh my goodness, we'll have to go to the most powerful one. And that is Goddess Durga. Goddess Durga is also one of the forms of Goddess Kali. So Durga is the goddess of empowerment. And she's very strong. She's a warrior. She rides on a tiger. And she's the warrior goddess. But even she knew that Rakta Bija is very, very, very powerful. So even I need a version of me that is even more powerful than Durga. So from her eyebrow comes Kali. And she is like this blood-sucking, blood-hungry, thirsty, and she's ready to slash down all the demons, and her tongue sticking out. So what happens with Rakta Bija is, if you attack him, he's the demon. If you attack him and if you cut him, when his blood falls on the ground, every drop of blood is going to create even more Rakta Bijas. So he feels like he's infinitely powerful and limitless. But Kali is even more powerful than him. What Kali does is, not only does she slay off all the demons, she also drinks up all the blood. So the blood that drops, she drinks up all the blood, so there are no more Rakta Bijas, and she destroys him. But she gets so possessed by this mad rage, that she is becoming unstoppable. She just keeps on destroying. So even after all the demons are destroyed, she keeps on destroying. So what happens is, Lord Shiva, who is her husband, he goes down and lies down on the ground in a very vulnerable and childlike kind of way. And she was about to step on him in her mad frenzy, and then suddenly she wakes up out of her state of possession, and she realizes, oh my goodness, I need to stop. So she stops. So the message is that, why is it Kali and Shiva always go hand in hand? They are husband and wife. Kali is this raw, untamed, emotional power of the feminine that all of us have. And Shiva is the masculine aspect also within all of us, whether you're a man or a woman. Shiva is the consciousness within us. Shiva is the truth within us. Shiva is the self-awareness. So the message here is, when you let your rage, unleash your rage to fight for justice, to fight the demons, whether they are the internal demons, your internal shadow, or the external demons, but in combination with Shiva. To do it in combination with Shiva means to do it consciously. When anger comes, I become present to that anger. I don't repress it. I don't go around killing someone from it. Of course, this is more metaphorical. But I use that anger consciously. I use that anger with love, like foundation. Shiva is lying down. Shiva is consciousness, truth, love, compassion. So the foundation on which I'm going to express my raw emotions that are going to give me that power is truth. So I'm going to channel my anger in a way that serves the truth, that serves justice, that serves love. And that is why this fierce goddess, this so-called fierce, angry goddess, is actually one of the most compassionate mothers of all, also in Indian mythology. So that is the paradox that I find really powerful. Shiva is the consciousness, Shiva is the light. So you're going into the dark space, you're going into the shadow with this light by your side. And you're throwing this light on these dark areas, and you realize, oh my goodness, look, there is that belief from my childhood that says I'm not good enough and I don't deserve to be loved. Oh, that is why I've been attracting all these terrible relationships. Oh my goodness. And Kali comes and slashes it out. I don't know if you all feel it during the full moons, but very often during full moons, I get very emotional. And I heard from a lot of people, they also get very emotional. And then the veil between the unconscious world and the conscious world, it becomes very thin. So from your conscious mind, you are able to enter into your unconscious. And it's sometimes not very comfortable, because you lay in your bed and sometimes you cry the whole night and you can't sleep. But you know what? It's one of the most healing and powerful things that you can do. Surrendering to that pain, because when you're crying it out, maybe I'm crying out, I don't even know why I'm crying sometimes. Maybe I'm crying out that childhood pain, that where I felt like, oh my goodness, I was rejected by my father, by my mother, or I was abused by this person, so maybe I deserve to be abused. So I've ended up attracting all these relationships where I'm getting abused. So in that sense, when the Kali awakens within, and when you do that journey into the deep, deep dark with the presence of Shiva and his truth and his love, you put light in these dark parts, and she slashes it away with the swords, the inner demons, the inner dragons, the inner shadow. So liberation. So first is power, second is liberation, third is authenticity. I'm being fiercely honest and fiercely authentic. Then I don't become this angry person. I have a friend who has a line here. He has been angry since childhood. He has a line here, and I see anger in his eyes, but he never gets angry. And he tells me, I never get angry. But even when I'm saying a joke to him, he's not able to sometimes laugh at the joke. There's just a very little laughter, because his energy is stuck in that anger which he's not willing to feel. And that anger comes from another childhood abusive experience. But if instead he was willing to own this anger and feel it and process it, he would not go around being angry all the time. And he doesn't even realize. It's only, people can see it. So when you own your anger, when you own your fear, when you own every emotion, you grow in your authenticity, and you can show up more as, this is who I am to the world, rather than this is who you would like me to be. And so nice. Wholeness, the gift of wholeness, is the same thing, I think, in some ways. Wholeness is the marriage of the unconscious with the conscious, the dark with light, the Shiva with Shakti. It's the marriage. So embodying the Kali, because we are living in a patriarchal world, and a lot of us have been so deeply conditioned by patriarchy that we don't even know. Most of us, a lot of us are running just masculine energy, because feminine energy has to be repressed, and like, oh my goodness, that's not good enough. You have to hide your shadow. So the marriage of the shadow and the light, that's bringing us more into our wholeness. It frees up creativity. Trust me, when you do the inner journey into the shadow world, you're going to find some of the most beautiful treasures there. You're creative artists. A lot of us are creative artists. And we all know that sometimes we create some of the most phenomenal art when we dive into those dark places and come back with the treasures that are there within. Very often, somebody who might be like perfectly trained dancer, but has never been through too much pain or suffering, or this kind of, has not met their shadow. Sometimes you might find their dance to be like beautiful to your eyes, but it does not touch you very deep inside your soul. But when someone accesses that deep part within themselves, the darkness and the suffering and the pain and the brokenness, and then when your art comes from there within, oh my goodness, you might not have your PhD, but your art is going to touch people's souls, the deepest part of their souls. And you're going to heal the world with your art. So, and fearlessness, of course, Kali, when Kali possesses you, your rage brings so much courage. And finally, unconditional love. Because she cuts off the ego, because she cuts off the illusion that we are separate, we start realizing our oneness. And when all the bullshit has been released of, the childhood, the healing, the messages that come from the childhood trauma, like, oh, I'm not good enough, cutting out all those parts that are not really truth, the truth, what remains is love, so you grow in unconditional love when you when you are willing to embody every emotion. So how do I access this feeling that the divine feminine has been suffering since a long time and she's been repressed? So if you don't feel something from your personal life calling to you directly, you can think of these other women. The girls in Africa who are being raped at 5 or 6 years of age. The rape case that happened in Delhi. The girls who have acid being thrown on their face. Because we are all one, right, at some level. So if you cannot immediately relate to this the repression of the divine feminine, you can think of them. And I invite you to bring your pages up. Shall we? Together? The second part, worshipped. Okay. Worshipped as a goddess, known to be the eternal mother. A child is born from me, a new life, a new creation. And yet, why have I always been in chains? Chains of violence, chains of silence. But the compassionate Tara can also be the empowered Kali. It is her Shakti that can set us free. Shakti means energy, Shakti means power. Okay, one last time, but as loud as you can this time, okay? Worshipped as a goddess, known to be the eternal mother. A child is born from me, a new life, a new creation. And yet, why have I always been in chains? Chains of violence, chains of silence. But the compassionate Tara can also be the empowered Kali. It is her Shakti that can set us free. Worshipped as a goddess, known to be the eternal mother. A child is born from me, a new life, a new creation. And yet, why have I always been in chains? Chains of violence. Chains of silence. But the compassionate Tara can also be the empowered Kali. It is her Shakti that can set us free. Whenever I've done this dance, like if I'm going through a few months of depression and like, where the hell is my life going? I do this dance, it's a longer performance, but bam, my life just changes overnight. Everything looks so different. Because there is something about the metaphor of breaking chains open. There is something about awakening or invoking the power of this archetype which is so infinite. And that reminds me how infinite I am from inside. Why do I go around walking the earth, walking all over the earth like feeling so limited, feeling so disempowered, feeling so victimized, right? So for us to get in touch, imagine if we had to get in touch with this kind of limitless power every day. Just woke up in the morning, how differently would we live our lives, you know? How you hold your body makes a world of a difference. If I was somebody who was really depressed, this would be my body language, right? If I was embodying Goddess Tara, I would be the soft-spoken version of me, Archana. Right? But I don't want to stay stuck in this archetype all the time. Imagine me being like this all the time. Somebody wants to come and abuse me, I'll say just, no. Somebody comes to abuse me, I do this. What I do with my body becomes me. It becomes my psychology. Right? So you change how you're holding your body, is going to change your psychology. It's going to shift your consciousness. It's going to shift how you show up in the world, whether it's your work, your personal relationships, everywhere. Fierce authenticity. Gentle authenticity. Fierce authenticity. We need all. We don't need just one. If people, you'll find people sometimes, somebody's stuck only in the victim archetype, somebody's stuck only in the savior archetype. Oh, I want to save the world, saving everyone all the time. What's happening to me? I'm getting chronic fatigue syndrome because I'm like not taking care of myself. So embodying all the different archetypes is also important. Sometimes we don't know that we are running mostly like, masculine energies or following masculine principles, and there's that kind of, imbalance. So how do you rehabilitate that balance between the masculine and the feminine? So how do you embody more in your day-to-day life? Kali, Durga, Shakti. So a lot of you must be more familiar with this name, Shakti, because you know Shiva, Shakti. But these are all names of the same goddess. This is the goddess of empowerment. This is her even more fierce part, which gives deaths and rebirths. And because she's able to give death, that is why you are able to be reborn. And that is why you become more free and become more creative. There is Nietzsche, the philosopher. He shared something very interesting about the journey of human being. He called it the three metamorphoses of the spirit. So he said that when the human being is born in the beginning, as a child, of course, we are very creative and free. And then, of course, the social conditioning starts about you have to do this job, you have to live like this or like that. So the first stage is you are a camel, doing things that you're supposed to be doing. Oh, I have to carry this weight and walk. Okay, you're working like the camel. Then this camel gets an opportunity to fight these dragons, and in order to fight these dragons, this camel has to become the lion or the lioness. So you need to find that Kali within or whatever. So basically the dragons represents the shadow. Because a lot of people will just go on living this normal, superficial life. Everything is fine in my life, and bam, all of a sudden, one day, cancer, heart attack, whatever, in the hospital for a few years or... So the journey into the shadow is inevitable. A lot of people will resist it, fight it, deny it. If you deny it, then Kali is going to possess you in some other way and it's going to take you there. It's like if you're not going willingly with a smile, with love, then you're going to be dragged there, because everybody has shadow. Shadow is a part of life. So if I awaken the lioness within myself and I bravely fight this dragon, which means I am willing to meet my shadow and dance with it and learn from it and grow from it. I'm willing to meet my own death. I'm willing to meet aspects of myself that need to be given death in order for me to be reborn. Which means the earlier example that I gave, that as a child, if I was abused and if I'm constantly attracting abusive relationships as an adult, I've not looked at my shadow and I've not tried to heal it. But if Kali comes and possesses me and she helps me go into that deep darkness and heal that shadow of being wounded or abused as a child, and I become free from it, I become free from this dragon, then lo and behold, I can attract a new relationship that comes more from a place of empowerment, that makes me feel more free, that makes me feel more loved and nourished. So if the lioness or the lion is able to fight this dragon and comes victorious, then this lioness once again is turned into a child. Why a child?
A child can learn the most.
Yeah, and a child is creative. Child knows how to play. You know, a lot of times when you have too much trauma, it kind of makes you heavy. If you let all of it stay in the unconscious, it makes you heavy. You cannot play, you cannot laugh. I've dated an American guy who is like emotionally so numbed out because of whatever he went through childhood that he could not laugh. I could not laugh with him. I was like, he's such an awesome person, but I cannot be with him because I'm not able to laugh with him. You know, because if you freeze one emotion, if you freeze anger, if you freeze fear, like you're talking about the fear, facing the fear, that was amazing, whatever you just shared with me. So if you keep your anger frozen and hidden and say that, oh no, I don't have any anger, it's like all neat and clean, you push the garbage under the rug and no, it's all fine, it's all fine. What happens is all the emotions come from the same space. They are all energy. So if you repress your anger and your fear, you're also going to repress your joy. You're also going to repress your creativity. And you're going to repress your ability to love freely. You know, you'll become too cold. So that is why the child, because the child is innocent, child is free, child can be creative. But from my personal experience, I can say that when I was a little girl, I was, of course, infinitely creative. You could just play a radio and I would just start dancing. I would never say like, oh no, I haven't choreographed this song, which I had been doing in the last couple of years sometimes when people ask me to perform to a new song. So that creativity is a treasure, but I like the child that you become at the end even more. Because when this child or this camel goes through the process of facing his or her brokenness, you're taken down deep into the dark, you know, and that is where you meet your deepest treasure. And then when you come and you share your art with the world, your art will have soul stories. Your art will have messages that you channeled from the divine just because you became so broken open that divine wisdom and divine light and divine creativity started flowing through you. Then the songs that you will write after going through your journey of brokenness, that will bring so much more healing and empowerment to the world. So that is why I appreciated my creativity as a child. It was really amazing. But now I feel, having gone through the journey of brokenness and health issues and whatever, now I feel that I am able to share much more deeper soul treasures through my art. Now I'm able to stand up and say like, you know what? If my art is not going to elevate the consciousness of the society or leave the society, this world, a better place, then I would rather not do it. If it's going to bring down the consciousness of the world, then I don't want to do it. Not just for the sake of pure entertainment. So this is the paradox of Kali. She looks like a demon slayer. She looks like she has this sword in her hand, but her left hand has the sword and all other things to destroy. And in a lot of pictures they say that her right hand is actually giving boons and it is giving blessing. And she's telling people with this hand, do not fear. So she's a very paradoxical goddess. She comes and cuts off a lot of things out from your life. You know, whatever you don't need, the past burdens you are carrying, your social conditioning you are carrying, just come and slash it out. And it sounds very cold and heartless. Oh, she's destroying, she's destructive. But because she's destructive, because she comes to give death to you, that is why she's able to give you life. Right? Behind death is life.